there we go. So you were asking me about my journey and where my journey in listening began, Gordon. So my life transformed in discerning and discovering the impact of generative listening. As I said, this listening that generates the finest thinking and self-expression in another. But actually, when I think about this, it started a lot longer, way back. And I was recounting to myself that quite often when I look back, it's these specific experiences or times I had that I didn't realize the significance until I was thinking about where my journey of listening began. So imagine I was back at school, I was at junior school, and I was in the classroom, and one day my teacher pulled me out or asked me to stay behind at the end of the lesson. And I was kind of like, I wonder where this is going. And she asked me, she said, Jane, would you speak to one of your friends, Heather, because her parents are going through a divorce right now. And I wondered if you could just talk with her. And I myself was going through living the divorce of my own parents. And my experience with this was that in the break later that week, I sat with my friend Heather and asked her how she felt. And she began to share with me her experiences and tell me what she thought and her fears around her parents going through this time. And I listened. I asked some questions. She asked me questions and I shared my experience. And it dawned on me in that moment that the teacher had asked me not to talk to Heather, but rather to be there and listen with her. We were 10 years old. So I think for me, the experience of listening and really the impact listening had on another human being in showing how much we care began when I was 10.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. I hadn't realized it started so early on, really. And it is quite impactful, isn't it? A lot of listening is all about the types of questions that we ask. Power is in the questions and the focus and the concentration. But this is, of course, is your second book on listening, isn't it? I'm quite keen to find out what sparked your desire to create this one and what was different about this from the first.
Well, thank you. So, just as the same as my first book, the same with this second book, I was asked to write it. And this time, though, I was asked to write this one, first of all, by my husband, who's here today. And Ed has been an amazing encourager of my work. And he challenged me to write the second book based on the stories I would share, the experiences I was having, and the feedback I was having from clients and delegates on their experience of either learning to listen with me or experiencing the listening from my coaching. But it wasn't only Ed. There were others who encouraged me to write this book a second time, asking for case studies, asking if I would create something that was more like a workbook where they could apply the skills and perhaps design some activities that they could practice for themselves and reflect on. And so for me, what's different about this book is that this book, I hope, is a book of hope, a book that will sow the seeds and provide the skills for others to have a greater impact in their own life and the lives of others. For those who know me well, I'm not an academic, I'm a practitioner. I'm super practical. So what I learn, I love to put into practice and share with others. And so this book is a very practical book. It's easy to read and easy to digest. And it's a combination of taking the reader through first of all, answering some key questions around why listening is critical in life, business, and work. And then it takes you through 5 levels of listening and 10 skills of listening and 7 principles that will help us overcome the biases of listening. And it's peppered with conversations and case studies to bring these skills and how we navigate them to life in order to help you improve not only your listening, but your relationships, your communication, and impact as a leader in your life.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's super. I reckon, Jane, we should give away a book now, don't you? I think it's
Mm,
time we should give our first book away. So we're going to do something on the screens, and I want you to have a look at your screen
my
and
screen.
go, yeah, your screen, and go along to the fourth fourth column and
Okay.
go down on the third row. Who is that?
That is my friend Katie Light.
Woo! Katie Light. Katie
So,
Light is on the first book.
Katie, I am thrilled. I was thrilled to qualify Katie as a Time to Think coach at the end of last year. So,
oh, thank you.
Woo! Right, and we're going to give away the cards, aren't we now? So I want you to go to the second screen now,
all
Jane,
right.
the second screen, and I want you to go along the one, two, three, four, fifth row, and the second person in.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Second person in is Marion Nikita from Germany. Marion,
Woo!
so you have your listening deck cards coming your way.
Right, super. Well done, you. And we'll be giving some more of those away in a minute. But we'd like to get some of your experience. I don't know if you guys know the platform Mentimeter. Jane, I think we're going to put the code in the chat. What we want you to do is to ask a specific question, and this question is: think of a time when you felt listened to. What did it feel like? Yeah, and you'll see. Does everybody know how to use this? So the question is, think of a time when you felt listened to. What did it feel like? Go ahead and pop your answers in Menti, and we'll share the screen to show the results. The great thing about this thing here is it actually brings up a word cloud as we see it. Got tons of words coming in now. Wow, look at all this. It's great. So Pam says valued. Sue says respect. Portia says valued. Robin says understood. Charlie says free and liberated. No code.
Fran, thank you. Honored.
And Anne says supported. Elizabeth says glorious. That's a lovely word, isn't it? Colin says safe. That's an interesting word, isn't it? Jen says cared for, supported, loved, warm. Nurtured is another lovely word. Look, I mean, these are really empowering words, aren't they, Jane? You know, Gary says freeing, valued, valued, valued. So powerful, isn't it? I mean, I don't know if you want to comment on what you're seeing here, Jane. What sort of responses? Is this what you expected?
Well, it is, and thank you. And I'd love to make the word cloud as we take them from the chat later. And it what really strikes me is the impact of when we listen to another, how that makes people feel. And so my hope is that, just by asking ourselves this question, is that we sow the seeds to recognize the impact we have when we choose to listen to another, on that impact it has on the other's life. And so some of these words of feeling respected, I find it's very dignifying of a human being to respect them, to validate them, as Jenny says, to help them feel cared for. Who wouldn't want to feel like this? So why wouldn't we want to listen? Why wouldn't we want to invest in time and effort in listening more so that we can have this impact on the lives of others?
Yeah. Does anybody fancy just sharing and coming off their mic and just saying, putting some value as to why they said what they said? Anybody like to just, share a bit of an experience? Kevin, I know you will because you are a great orator.
Of course I will. Gordon, I wasn't going to volunteer. I was going to let someone else. Wow. Okay, I'll talk about this just listening in general, and then since we're here honoring Jane with her book, I'm going to say something about listening from Jane. But you know, I see valued, validated often in the chat. That's how I feel. That I have worth. Right, that there's my thoughts have worth, because I think so many of us, we just don't think there's anything unique about our thoughts. But I have been, like many of you, blessed to have had some of those listening sessions with Jane. And what I can say, Gordon, and I think you know, so I would not be doing the things I am doing today were it not for Jane opening up some of those avenues of possibility in my heart, soul, and mind, and allowing me to see what I left, Jane. I mean, one of those, whatever what's the clarifying question? Whatever. I'm not a trained thinker, as you thinking space, thinking environment person. I've just benefited from it. But what if I believed that everything in my life had prepared me for this moment, and this moment for me? That's what I left a listening session with Jane with, and it just liberated so many things in my life and opened up so much possibility.
That's great, Kevin. That's brilliant. Thank you so much. Where
Can I
is
say I love you, Jane? And congratulations
I love
on the
you
book.
too.
that's included? That's included. Elizabeth, you want to ask a question?
I do, yes. Now, I'm very privileged, obviously, to have known Jane for a little while. And therefore, Jane, I know your passion for lifelong learning, and also the powerful possibility that you really create for others through your writing. And so I would love to know, what did you learn when you were writing this book?
Gosh, thank you. Gosh, well, what I learned were a number of things, actually. First of all, in interviewing. So I had the privilege of interviewing Bob Chapman, Stephanie Unwin, and wonderful Gavin Carville, who's here today. And I guess what I learned from Bob, the impact of listening at scale. When you decide, and as a leader of an organization, he's in Bob's case, CEO of a multi-billion-dollar manufacturing organization, listening was very much part of the core tenets of their culture of truly human leadership, and how they brought listening in and the impact it had on the lives of others, not only at work, but also in their home lives. I learned from Stephanie the wonderful story she shared with me about, again, as a CEO of a business, listening to all stakeholders. And by that, in the power company for which Stephanie works, it was holding listening circles in the community. And this, they serve the Aboriginal community in Western Australia. But what was so powerful for me in learning from her was how she took the board members of the organization out into the bush to listen to the Aborigines in her community, to truly understand what it was like and how they could supply energy resources and solutions to them. And I learned from Gavin how, by choosing to listen to a stranger, someone we've never met before, in his case, a taxi driver, and be willing to learn of somebody's story and hold that space compassionately and with intention, the difference it can make to somebody's life. I guess I also learned through writing this book, this book, I take a deeper dive into listening. I talk about 5 levels, which over the 5 years since I wrote my last book, discerned that there are different levels of listening. So far, I've found 5 in interviewing with Stephanie. In fact, I came upon a 6th, but more research to be done on that one. But for now, I've discovered 5 that which we entwine with throughout our everyday. We listen in different contexts with different people. And in the book, I share, how do we navigate those different levels of listening? And I guess I learned through writing the book, through the case studies, through some of my own coaching client conversations, and actually listening in my own family, what level of listening we can engage with to have the greatest impact for the other.
To two. That's a pretty impressive response. Thank you very much, Jane. Well done. Anna, can I ask you to volunteer your question?
Thank you, Gordon. Jane, it's a huge achievement having written a book, and actually in your case now, 2 books. And I would love to know, I'd love to hear more about your reflections and learnings about writing a book per se.
Gosh, well, thank you for that. So my reflections in writing the book, I wonder if that we all have a book in us. Ed said this to me today, but Janie, do you not think everybody has a book in them? So my reflections are that I think we all have a book in us. My experience of writing the book in last year was challenging. In the year of COVID, when my business took a shift and I needed to shift the nature of my work. So I was spending a lot of time teaching, which I absolutely loved, and as well as coaching, and actually finding the time to write the book alongside juggling it with my work and my home life. And in my home life last year was tough. I have to say it wasn't easy supporting my family through some challenging times. And so I would say, I would encourage anyone to, when there's something they feel super passionate about, is to share their hopes and dreams in the book, because it's possible. And one of the things that helped me was Ed and the girls were very kind and saying, yeah, Mom, okay, you've got to have time to write your book. But I needed the time that was free of distraction and sort of clarity. So I found myself writing my book, a majority of it, 2 weeks in the summer when we were on holiday. And another time when Ed said to me, Kate, let's go away for a weekend. He wanted to treat me to a lovely retreat. And I said, I'd love to go, but only if I could use it as a writing retreat as well. So I found myself enjoying some beautiful health treatments and sneaking in and out to write my book. So finding the time to do it was something that I found that needed the focus and the discipline to do it, but it was worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I can just add to that. I mean, discipline is so important, isn't it? Particularly when you're talking about adding real creativity in a book. And I can, I had the same experiences myself. So I and particularly when you add and you layer COVID and all of the pressures that we have on that period. So I think what you've done is absolutely amazing.
Gordon, can I add? Can I quickly add, as I was part of that journey, just another little insight that comes to my mind. And that's when the writer is in the flow. I think they call it in the flow, in the zone, in the flow. So yes. From time to time, when I kind of noticed Jane was in the flow, I would be remote, stay out of the way. And I remember one day where I think I'd been out for about 3-4 hours, and then came back with shopping bags and whatever else was going on. And Jane thought it was like 5 minutes that I'd been out, but she was absolutely getting what was in here in the flow onto paper, which was wonderful.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Thank you, Ed. Portia, lovely to see you. You've got a question for Jane.
Actually, a question and just a statement. I am just so honored and blessed to be here and to have met this wonderful person. And I will say, you get to a point where you think you know so much, and there's always still something to learn. And getting to know Jane, having the opportunity to actually dive into her first book, participating in her Listening to Liberate Challenge, has really allowed me to step away from what I thought I knew, learn something different, and with her listening skills and the way she teaches them, create and develop such deeper connections with people. So I'm thankful for that. And I am just so excited and can't wait to actually read this new book and to understand and get to know you and to realize you were working on a book in addition to teaching and learning and working with us through some of these challenges. I am so grateful and so humbled and absolutely love you.
That's really nice, Portia.
Thank you, Portia.
Yeah, you'll get her all emotional. We've said at the beginning, you've got to not do this, not become emotional.
Thank you, Portia. I so appreciate you and all your amazing contributions on our challenge. And many of you are in the book. I wondered, Gordon, if I could just take a moment to offer my thanks to a number of people that have helped me on this journey.
Absolutely.
So first of all, the many contributors, some who are not able to be here today, but were all invited. Bob Chapman, Stephanie Unwin, Gavin, who is here, thank you for being an incredible ambassador along this journey with me. For Nirin, who wrote the foreword, and for Jeff Beecham, who wrote the most beautiful poem featured in the back of the book. And for my dear friend, editor Sam Guys, from helping me, there you are, through our lovely walks in the summer and really from the initiation stage all the way through. From my wonderful illustrator Kat, who's sitting right next to Sam on my screen. And you know, my journey with this book actually was advanced because of your work, Kat, when we got together and designed. Kat is the beautiful illustrator of these amazing illustrations that are on the listening deck, which is the set of coaching cards that sits with the book. It's a very practical, meaningful and fun way to engage with listeners. But Kat, it was your work that inspired me putting this whole thing together with the levels and the skills, etc. And also Joe's here for my wonderful proofreader from both of my books, Jo Johnson, who's an incredible editor herself and proofreader. So thank you for your work. And I would love just to thank the reviewers for my Alina, my dear friend and wonderful ambassador for listening. For Gary Turner, who's an amazing friend and another wonderful ambassador. Ruth Starsmere, thank you. For Jim, Nuria, for Gavin, for Bob, who did a review, and for my dear friend Colin, the listener. Thank you. And Fran, my mentor coach, who is here tonight. I know, Fran Fisher, what a privilege. Thank you, Fran, for being with me on this journey.
Wow, great. Well done, everybody. Thank you so much for supporting Jane. I think we should give away 2 more items, shouldn't we? Another book and a pack of cards.
Yes, please.
Right. So we're going to go to your 3rd screen now.
I've only got 2 screens.
Oh, 2 screens. I've got 2 screens. That's no good, then, is it? So, right. Let's stay on the home page, number 1 screen, and we're going to go in the first column.
Yeah.
3rd person down.
Okay, another one, because that's Katie again.
Oh, it's another one. Oh, it's Katie.
They're all different on everybody's
It's all
setup,
different, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so that's no good then. It's the second column, Jane, right at the bottom.
Oh, that's Jen. So Jen, I don't know if you can come off camera. It's a lovely picture of a canoe. So I'm not sure.
Okay.
Jen, are you there? Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. No, she's yes, there. Hi, Jen.
Right. Great.
Thumbs up from Jen.
So she's going to win a book, and now we're going to have a set of cards. So we'll go to screen number 2.
Yeah.
And we'll go right along the top row and in the top right corner.
That is my friend Cara Moore. Cara, the cards are coming onto you, my friend. Very,
very good. So, any more questions that you'd like to ask Jane? And before I ask her some other things, Sam wants to ask a question. Go, Sam.
Hi, Jane.
Hi, Sam.
Hello. Yeah. Firstly, thank you so much for bringing your innate gifts to the world, which I've benefited from recently. I wanted to ask you, in all your time doing this as a professional, why is it, and do you think you could shed light on your experience and wisdom? So the first part of my question is, why is it that in professional circles, when so many of us are gifted in our professions, whatever they may be, we choose to be selective listeners, or maybe not even embody the listening environment, which, whilst being taught as a concept here, comes to each one of us naturally from birth. We've all been given our ears. And secondly, what have you seen fundamentally within the corporate landscape that you think should change as we move forward as a society, so that people listen better?
Wow, thank you for the question. It's beautiful. I think why listening skills are, and listening generally, is overlooked. I think you alluded to there, the very first piece, the assumption that hearing is the same as listening, that we are given the innate skill of hearing. It's passive. You know, we'll hear the murmur of the right now, the fan, or we'll hear the ticking of a clock, but we won't be listening to it. So I think people perhaps conflate the two together, whereas hearing is a passive skill and listening is active. And listening takes practice, and listening takes discipline. I think sometimes people underestimate the investment in terms of doing that, learning to listen at this depth of intentional listening. I think another reason, Sam, why it's overlooked and why we're not listening as much is because people are more often and more commonly rewarded for speaking in meetings, in any gathering, in a classroom, rewarded in some way more than they are for listening. Whereas in reality, when we listen with intention, with empathy, to generate the best in others, we are giving them the greatest gift that we could possibly give them. And I think the last thing I'd love to say on this point is that I think that listening is often deemed as a soft skill. And I think in the corporate environment, that can be overlooked. Whereas in reality, for me, listening is what I would call, and I think Brené Brown names these skills as courage building skills. For me, it takes courage to listen, to be willing to have our own mind changed, to be willing to sit with somebody who perhaps is in distress, and we're there to sit with them in empathy. It takes courage not to jump in and solve the issue for that person. We're still the person. So it takes courage to sit with and generate the finest thinking so the individual can release their own potential and move forward. So for me, The Listening Coach is a book of hope, the hope that encourages people to really see the impact of listening so we can bring it more into our corporate world. And what I see now happening, Sam, is that I think the pandemic has been an opportunity for people to connect more deeply, believe it or not, interestingly, through the Zoom, and have become more empathetic towards their fellow team members. Because for some, they've got to know them more through the engagement on the Zoom, through having looked at the backgrounds and the home life. And so I think the pandemic has given us an opportunity to really connect and listen more with each other. And that's what I see moving forward, but I hope for more.
Thank you, Jane. That was a great answer. Shelley, lovely to see you here, a mutual friend to the two of us.
Hi, Shelley.
Have you got a question?
I have. I've got to go soon, so I wanted to jump in. I'd like to ask you if you would share with us what you think your greatest gift is. I have an opinion on it from the time I've known you, but I wondered what you felt it was.
Wow, well, thank you for saying that. What do I think? Well, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to tell you what two people share with me, or what people share with me, and maybe I can discern it from that. One story always moves my heart was the minister of our church says to me, you know, Jane, you're one of the biggest encouragers. When I walk across the street, you know, there are some people that you might cross over the street to avoid. Well, you're one of the people that I cross over the street to meet. So I think for me, encouragement could be one. And one of my delegates, in fact, more than one, several of my delegates will often share with me the way that you appreciate others. You see things that we don't. You hear things that we don't. You feel things that we don't. And so the way that you appreciate other people, what you see in them, the goodness you see in them, is something that I would love to learn. So perhaps it's encouragement and appreciation. What do you think, Shelley? What do you see in me?
Well, I'm glad you didn't give my answer, because it would have made me look a bit foolish, wouldn't it? I think it's compassion.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate you, Shelley, for your encouragement since we've met. It's been a wonderful source of richness for me.
Good. Well, feelings mutual. And I'll catch up with you soon.
Look forward to it.
Thank you, Shelley. Sarah, nice to see you, Sarah. You've got a question for Jane.
Hi, yeah.
Oh,
Hi,
look.
Jane.
Oh,
You've got two little people listening, learning all about listening. And Phoebe has a question for you.
What was your favourite bit in the story?
In the book.
In the book.
Story.
Oh, Phoebe, thank you for asking. What a beautiful, beautiful question. Oh my gosh, my favorite book in the book, the favorite piece in the book. I think it was my friend's poem. Can I read it to you briefly? You ready? Okay, so Jeff, don't blush now. My favorite piece was my friend Jeff Beecham, who's on our call today, who was part of our very first listening challenge in May. At the end of the challenge, he shared this beautiful poem. Okay, Phoebe, this is for you and your brother there. And we've got Jeff on screen. The poem is called Gratitude for Listening. Listening is liberating me. Gratitude adds color to what I see. There's so much more than before. Through the lens I now view in life, I'm free. Wonder is a place that we can find, listening to liberate our minds. True happiness is sublime for ourselves and others if we're kind. I'm grateful for listening to the friends I have in you. You've made a difference to my life. That's why my poem's for you. What happens next? Now our challenge is won. Listening, our journey has begun. Gratitude is how we choose to run. I appreciate you, each and every one. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Phoebe, for your question.
Right.
You deserve, I think we should send you a pack of cards, Phoebe. I'm going to add another pack of cards to come your way.
Yeah, and we need to do, I'm just going to come back to Raquel in a second. Oh, bless her. Thank you. I just want to make sure that we've got another 2 gifts to give away. So back to Celebrity Squares. Right, we're going to give another book away. Let's do the home screen and the person right in the middle. Who is that?
The person right in the middle, Karen. Karen Trifoletti.
Hello, I'm honored. Thank you.
Hi, Karen. Where are you from, Karen?
I'm in Utah presently. Thank you.
In Utah, wonderful. Well, perhaps you could drop me a message afterwards with your address, but lovely, welcome.
Thank you so much. This is wonderful.
Well done, Karen. Right, so the book of cards now is going to go on the second screen.
All right.
And we're going to do the second row, third person along.
That is Mr. Richard Gundle.
Woo! Oh, right.
Listed cards for all your team members and fun at family gatherings, Richard.
Right, back to the questions. Raquel, you've got a question.
Hi, Jane.
Hi, Raquel.
It's lovely to be here, and I'm loving hearing everything, all the comments about you from everybody else, which I'm not surprised about, but it's really nice listening to this. You said your book was a book of hope. So I was just wondering what hope it sparked for you personally.
Gosh, what a lovely question. Thank you. And Raquel is an amazing listener and has a wonderful podcast I had the opportunity to be part of. And so The Listening Alchemist is a stunning piece of work, and ongoingly. So what hope the book has inspired in me is that I truly believe listening can change the world. For me, listening is a way to reduce misunderstandings, to reduce some of the lack of dignity that we sometimes see. Listening for me is a way to build bridges in broken relationships. And so the seeds of hope that for me in writing this book have helped me reconnect with the impact of listening. I hope for leaders, it helps them to recognize their privilege of leadership and the privilege of the responsibility they have in the lives of others at work, in creating an environment where their team members feel seen and heard. It sows the seed for me of hope for parents. In my book, I hope that parents, that what I offer will help them nurture their own relationships with their children, the resourcefulness their children have, however young, for parents to see the difference that their children bring. Maybe born of the same parents, but can be very different. And how they foster a relationship with their children such that their children can make an impact and be who they're meant to be. And finally, I think for me, one day I would love for this book to be on the syllabus of a communication skills program somewhere.
That would be awesome, wouldn't it? Can you imagine? Amazing, amazing. Yeah. Kevin, I'm going to ask, that would be our last question, because I'm very keen to tell you about all these amazing offers that Jane has got. So, Kevin, tell us your question. Are you on mute, buddy?
As I'm listening to this beautiful conversation, Jane, and what insights have you gained of how we might better listen to ourselves and the inner voice?
Wow, that's beautiful. You know, the self-listening piece, it's one of the levels of listening. It really came alive in the listening challenge. I was so struck by the amount of people that really embraced this level of listening. And I share that the level of listening, as we begin, the foundation of listening is being able to listen to ourselves. And so what I would love to offer people is to think about listening to self. We have the choice. We can either listen with compassion or we can listen critically. And so the first thing I do is I would offer to listen to yourself with compassion. I think the second thing I would say is that listening to self, no different to listening to others, is that it is peppered with interruption. You know, we can interrupt ourselves as much as other people interrupt us. So when we're listening to ourselves, is to give yourself a space, an environment, whether it be quiet or whether you like to be in nature, such that you can be totally present with who you are. And I would also invite you, as a listening to yourself, to be kind to yourself, to think about what you're grateful for in terms of inspiring some hope and some courage within yourself.
Great, thank you very much, Jane, for that. Before I sort of conclude with my sort of final two questions, I just want to remind everybody about these amazing offers. So Jane's book is 20% off of a signed copy of The Listening Coach, which is available on her website, which is thelisteningcoach.co.uk. As long as you put a coupon code of JAG20 at the payment page. I think the details are going to be in the chat right now. Also, there is a 20% discount off the listening deck. Drop Jane an email to take up this offer, Jane at thelisteningcoach.co.uk.
No, we can't do that.
And then,
it's not that kind of a call.
Somebody turn off their mic. I'm just getting a bit of feedback here. I don't know who it is, but yeah. And then there's 50% off the published price to the 30-day Listening to Liberate challenge, which starts on the 7th of February. Actually, by way of hands in the air, who's been on the Liberate Challenge? Look, all these people. Oh, that's great. Lovely. Yeah. Amazing, wasn't it? I have to say, even myself, who I am truly the world's worst listener. So to actually have been on this is been great. I really, really enjoyed it. Right, couple of questions I'd like to sort of finish with, Jane. Looking forward, what are your hopes for the listening coach and the listening deck set of coaching cards that you've developed? What would you like to see them go?
Gosh, well, I think building on from Raquel's question, for me, I hope that it generates hope in others. I hope that this book coming out of the pandemic, and notice my optimism, we're coming out of the pandemic, but it will give people the opportunity to invest in themselves, to think about where and how can I impact lives of others. And, learning the skills of listening, in my experience, is in service of another, and listening to help other people understand more about themselves, their situation, and how they can, become the best of themselves. But also listening has helped me immensely, listening to others, to learn, as those who know me well, an ongoing passion of love, lifelong learning. So my hope is that it will be a source of hope for those who choose to read it, perhaps gift it to another. I also hope that the skills within the book will help people develop themselves as human beings. And the coaching cards, the deck of cards, I would love to see these cards, reach couples. I think it was Kat shared with me some of the wonderful groups, relationship groups and other groups that would really help people communicate more effectively. And I've put together, with Kat's help, 10 ways to use the cards. So in which ways we can have fun with each other in using them independently and then using them in groups. So I hope that both the book and the cards will reach the people that need them, that will reach establishments, whether that's work environments or education establishments, to serve the people in those environments.
Thank you, Jane. Yeah. I have to say, looking at the chat is going mental. This Gary said 5 copies of the book ordered, going to anonymously send to my CEO and 4 other ex-CEO members. That's fantastic. Wow. I think it just proves to you, if you've got something of value and you value somebody else, why would you not use this as a great gift for somebody? So I think that's really, really good. Karen says perhaps there is a series, Jane, the listening parent, the listening leader. I like that. You're getting some real-time feedback and research here, which is amazing.
Well, thank you, Karen. And I would love just to share with you. So we have the 30-day Listening to Liberate challenge. And this year, I'm going to be developing the next challenge, which is listening to lead. So it's very much, yeah. So thank you for that. It's coming. Stay tuned.
Great stuff. Gavin has got a question. You'd like to just chime in?
I suppose it was more of a comment than a question.
Okay.
I think if you troll the internet, you will find thousands of books telling you how to speak publicly, and the sharing of stories is so important. And I'm all into that. That's fine. But listening, and my hope for Jane is that her contribution will put the importance and the priority of listening way up there, which comes before. If you want to be a great storyteller, you listen. So, and I don't hear that so much, and I think Jane's contribution could be extraordinary. So thank you, Jane.
Oh, Gavin, that's really nice to say. Yeah, well, that's why we've got two ears, isn't it, and one mouth, and we should be using them in that proportion. Jane, I want to just sort of finish with, what sort of tips? What if you could give everybody in the room 3 awesome tips that they could take away with them tonight? What do you think they should be?
Gosh, so I guess first of all is make the decision to listen. Decide to listen. And when you do, to give your undivided attention, a palpable respect for the human being in front of you, whether it's a little person, whether it's an older person, whether it's somebody different from you, a different culture, speaks a different language, even that. So give your attention, number one. Number two, I would say, is to resist the urge to interrupt. You know, I've shared this with you in the past, Gordon, I know you love it, but when we resist, when we interrupt another, the brain receives it quite literally like an assault. And the speaker will lose their train of thought, and it will take time to get back up to where they were before. So resist the urge to interrupt is number two. And I guess for number three, of all the 10 skills I offer, I'm going to say, get comfortable with silence. Don't rush to fill the space. It's often our ideas, our thoughts, our connection to ourselves more deeply comes from that silence. So those would be the three. Give your attention, resist the urge to interrupt, and get comfortable with the silence.
Amazing. That's lovely. And so who do you reckon is the greatest listener of all time?
Well, I think that's quite subjective. There are a number of people who I experience, many of whom are on this call today, who are phenomenal listeners. We have the listener, Colin Smith, with us. We have Elizabeth Arthur, stunning listener with amazing insight. We just looking through the list here, we have some amazing people with compassion and heart and soul. And so for me, a great listener is somebody who really cares about the human mind, the human being in front of them. A great listener is somebody who is willing to have their mind changed, somebody who is willing to and holds back on their own judgment. And I guess a few people that come to mind who demonstrate some of these traits, and those who ask questions in service of another, are people like our Queen, the Queen of England. She is the most gracious listener. I haven't had the privilege, I think others on the call might have done, but I haven't yet met her. I think Barack Obama, my American friends, demonstrates some wonderful qualities. But I guess one who stands out to me, he's no longer with us, and that's Nelson Mandela, reading his autobiography.
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you think about his journey and what suppression that he faced for so long, and yet he bared no grudge against the people that perpetrated him, and look what he did. You know, he was admired and respected. He turned the corner for so many people in that country. And I think, you know, when you listen to somebody, you make a profound difference, don't you? And I must admit, you are right when you talk about an assault on the brain. You know, I mean, I'm a classic enthusiastic type of person, so I'm dying to jump in to a conversation, but resisting that and realizing the impact of allowing that person to finish their sentence and the impact that that has made me really think differently. So I want to thank you for, you know, your amazing achievements today. I'm very proud to call you my sister. It's lovely to have our mum on the call, whose Bessa is 85, still going strong, still active on Zoom. And of course, Ed supporting you so much with the book as well, which is fantastic. But also I want to thank every single one of you who turned up to support Jane, her journey, and the book, and the impact that it has made for all of you. So thank you so much. And we've actually finished 2 or 3 minutes early, but it's been a great night, great experience. And I know there's going to be a recording afterwards. And thank you very much.
And thank you, Gordon. I'm thrilled. It's very kind of you to host this evening. I so appreciate your enthusiasm and always ongoing support of all I do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.